welcome to Watch, Review, Repeat. This is the podcast where two best friends discuss the latest in film and television and then do it all over again the following episode. My name is Colton Brown. Joining me, it's Andrew Meadows.
I have returned.
Oh, no, we're not there yet. This is the Two Towers.
Oh. That was pretty good.
You like that?
Yeah, here we are, man. Talking about the Two Towers.
We're back with more the Lord of the Rings goodness. Yes, very exciting. We had a good, fun episode talking about the Fellowship of the Ring, kickstarting our long overdue The Lord of the Rings coverage, and wouldn't you know it, there's a second entry into the franchise, into the trilogy, and we are here to talk about it. So The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers is what is on our mind right now, what we're going to be talking about real soon on this bonus episode 32, which is the fifth entry in our series of epic bonus episodes centered on epic films, not historical epics, as we established last go around. We changed the name of the game so that we could talk about the Lord of the Rings. 200 plus episodes into our podcast tenure, we said it's fucking time to talk about Lord of the Rings, and so we did the damn thing. We started with the Fellowship. So certainly, if anyone hasn't, if you're here and you're listening to this and you're not myself and you're not Andrew, I hope that you've listened to our Fellowship of the Ring episode, because I think that is certainly the natural place to go to start and then make your way here. But yeah, this is the fifth entry in our epic bonus episodes. We've done the likes of Troy, Gladiator, and Lawrence of Arabia, Fellowship of the Ring, and now we're doing the Two Towers. So of course it's the second in our ongoing coverage of the Lord of the Rings trilogy. We've been watching the extended editions. I think that as of recording this, we are quite literally only through the Two Towers in terms of watching things. So right. It's certainly fresh. I think both you and I split it up, into a few different, sessions, sitting down, watching it. It's a long movie. It's even longer when you do the extended edition, although I would argue that's the way to do it. But we're here now. We're here talking about it. So, and that's pretty exciting. So before we get too deep into things, I want to say as well, this is a brief timed exclusive for our supporters on Patreon. And so if you are supporting us on Patreon, listening to this episode that way, thank you very much for your support. And if you're not, you're listening to this on the regular feed, probably sometime roughly in December, I would speculate, at least when it comes out onto the regular feed. Well, happy almost Merry Christmas or whatever. It's almost happy almost Merry Thanksgiving for us from when we're recording this. But certainly if you're listening to this on the regular feed and you want to get ahead of the game, listen to our Return of the King coverage whenever we get a chance to do that. What you need to do is go to patreon.com/watchreviewrepeat. If you chip in $2 on a monthly basis, that will get you access to that bonus episode. And not only that, you'll get access to all of our regular episodes earlier than anyone else in the world. And that is a fact. That is literally true. Except for Andrew and I. Again, we are excluded from that because we are the first ones. Yeah, fuck it. We're doing it live. We get to have these conversations and experience it before anyone else. But yeah. So highly encourage everyone to support us on Patreon if you're enjoying these episodes, even if you are waiting a little bit to hear these episodes. That $2 a month is not a lot that we ask of you, but it does go a long way helping us cover equipment costs, hosting costs, etc. We put the money right back into the podcast. So we certainly encourage anyone to chip in that way. Exactly. So, The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers. We're going to do things kind of the way that we did it last time. We will start off with a little bit of fun fact, since even though it's a bonus episode, since we're only doing one movie at a time, we're going to do a fun fact about the movie. I'm going to continue my making of the Lord of the Rings little segment that I began with our coverage of Fellowship, and then we're going to get into the movie, full spoilers, dive head first, and that'll be that. So So would you like to hear a fun fact about the Lord of the Rings Two Towers?
I need to hear it. Yes.
Here, I'm going to start with a question for you. I'm going to change things up a little bit.
Okay.
If you had to speculate, and maybe you don't know about the big fun fact for the Two Towers, but if you had to speculate, is there anything that comes to mind of what might be oft-spouted trivia about this film? You may or may not know it. I'm not trying to put you on the spot. Okay. All right. Fair enough. So it'll at least be new to one Andrew Meadows, and probably everyone that's listening is be like, yeah, I fucking know that. All right. I get it. But I'm going to do it because
I don't know. I might know it.
I was
but
probing to
I
see if
it.
Andrew had any awareness. All right. So there's a scene in this movie, The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, in which, obviously the Fellowship is broken up at the end of the Fellowship of the Ring. Aragorn is with Legolas and Gimli. They are searching for Merry and Pippin, who have been taken by the Uruk-hai, and they're taking them back to Saruman.
Yes.
Do you know what I'm talking about? You know where I'm going with this?
Yes, I actually told Sarah that when I was watching it.
Yep. See, so you did know it. I knew it was in there somewhere. So the fun fact, which is the fun fact that literally everyone and their mother fucking knows that's seen this movie, even if it's just buried deep in the recesses of their brain, they know it, is that there's some frustration because they run into the Rohirrim, who have been banished from Rohan, and they say, "Oh no, we fucking killed all those orcs. They're all fucking dead. Your little hobbit friends are probably fucking dead.
We killed everything."
And so they find the pile of bodies. They believe that at this time that Merry and Pippin have been killed, and Aragorn, Viggo Mortensen in character, in frustration kicks a helmet. And he screams in agony. But it's a little bit more convincing. And the reason it's so convincing is because he kicked the shit out of that helmet and broke a couple toes in the process of doing that. So that's the quote unquote fun fact. Now I'm going to offer up something a little beyond that, because I think that that's the pretext. Is everyone knows that everyone has that is in had any sort of mild interest, has seen The Lord of the Rings more than once. For some reason, that has just filtered into everyone's knowledge of being like, yeah, we fucking know that. I know. Yes, he broke his toe. We get it. Okay, we get it. But what you didn't know is that Viggo Mortensen was not the only asshole injuring himself filming this movie. In fact, a good chunk of those characters that I mentioned injured themselves throughout the filming process of this movie. Orlando Bloom, the old dummy, fell off a horse and broke some ribs. And Brett Beatty, who was Gimli's stunt double, I think probably more for height accurate sort of things, because John Rhys Davies is like 6.5 feet tall, quite a bit larger than Gimli actually is, had a knee injury from filming as well. And so there's actually wide shots. This is something you mentioned to me texting, and this is maybe jumping ahead to the movie itself. They're fucking running all the goddamn time, right? They're always running. So there are several shots of them just fucking sprinting, and in several of those wide shots, that was all filmed when they were all injured. So Viggo Mortensen's running on his broken toes. Orlando Bloom's sporting the broken ribs. Gimli's stunt double has a knee injury. So they're all running around, fucking hobbled as shit, and that's stuff that made it into the movie. So it's not just Viggo Mortensen that was injuring himself. There were injuries galore in the filming of the filming of The Two Towers, which is also the filming of everything else, because it wasn't as we'll talk about shortly, it wasn't exactly a sequential sequence of filming, but they're dedicated actors.
Yeah,
they dedicated themselves to the craft. They took one for the team. They got injured. They broke some toes, screamed in agony, and said, "That's fine. You can keep my scream of agony in the final cut." It's very convincing because it's fucking real.
It's true. They kept Tom Cruise's agony in there, right?
That's true, right? Did he break an ankle or something like that in Mission Impossible?
I think so.
Is that Fallout?
Yeah.
Yeah, good stuff.
Man, all the fucking running. We need to get to the Kingdom of Rohan. All right, let's go.
Just run there.
Just fucking take off running. Crazy. If I woke up from work, I woke up for work in the morning. All right, I got to get to work. And I just fucking open the door and start running. I'm going to get there. That's just ridiculous.
It is ridiculous.
They have access to horses. Why don't any of these motherfuckers have horses, Well,
they use horses sometimes when it's convenient.
I'd rather run across the kingdom of Middle Earth. That's what I'd rather do.
Maybe it's very small. Maybe it's like I was going to say like a state in that in the United States, but that would take a good, unless you're Forrest Gump, that would take a long ass time to run across as well. So yeah,
I need to get to Jacksonville.
Good example.
See Colton. Just start running. Ridiculous.
Yeah. Sometimes I accidentally hit Google Maps and it's set to the walk setting, and I was like, well, if I'm driving from Philadelphia to Florida, it's 15 hours, but if I walk, it's only like 8 days or whatever. It's not bad.
Might as well make a trip of it.
Continuous days of walking. If I run, that's probably only 7 days of running. I probably won't need to stop. This is Lord of the Rings ass shit right here. So
it's ridiculous.
Ridiculous.
Yeah. So where do we start on the Two Towers? You've seen this movie a lot more than me, I think.
I have. Before we get into the full-on Two Towers things, I want to tell you a little bit about the Lord of the Rings, the making of the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Yes. So the first one, what was the theme on the first one again?
So when we talked about Fellowship, I kind of talked about the development of the Lord of the Rings movie, and then got into the pre-production process a little bit. So I talked about the Weinstein interference, the 1 movie, 2 movie, finally turning into the 3 movies with New Line Cinemas getting involved.
Yeah.
And then we got into a little bit of, costume design, all the shit that they're fucking making in preparation for just making these damn movies. So on this episode, I'm going to talk about casting, which arguably could have been included in the pre-production thing, because certainly you need to cast your movies before you start shooting. And then I'm also going to talk a little bit about the filming process and things of that nature. And then finally, on this episode, I'm going to talk a little bit about the practical effects that they used during filming. And then, so when we talk about The Return of the King, when we finish up our Lord of the Rings coverage, we'll talk about post-production, which is going to include, visual effects, CGI, score, etc. And then we'll also talk a little bit about the reception, because I think certainly something that we got into a little bit is, these are hugely fucking popular movies. People love these movies. But also they made a shit ton of money. We talked about, I think we talked a little bit about the budget, that went into the Fellowship of the Ring, which was also, representative of the budget that went into the trilogy as a whole. And so I think that we'll want to talk about, like, look at all these awards, look at how much money, that sort of thing. So we'll get into that with the Return of the King. But for now, I want to start. I will start by first saying, which I think I said on the last episode, and if I didn't, I apologize. I definitely meant to say it. There are so many behind-the-scenes documentaries of the making of this trilogy that certainly what I'm about to say is far from exhaustive and probably a little less interesting than being able to see like a little featurette, a little documentary sort of thing. So if anyone owns like the discs, or honestly on YouTube, there's probably a good chunk of things that really just gets into this. So if this is the kind of thing that interests you, which is kind of the thing that it certainly interests me. I think Andrew probably has some interest in it to some extent, I would guess. There's a lot of really, really good like official stuff that like people involved in the making of these movies did. Like they documented so much. Obviously they filmed the damn thing, but they filmed a lot of the filming of the damn thing as well. So certainly check that out. If any of this sounds interesting, odds are there's probably something that like expounds on it, if that makes sense. So I'm going to begin with casting. That's where I'm going to start is the casting of this movie, because it was a long and winding process to arrive at the cast. I say this movie, I don't actually mean just the Two Towers. I mean the trilogy as a whole, which obviously most of the cast is principally the same throughout, although this movie does introduce some new characters. Return of the King introduces new characters, etc. But yeah, I mean, how do you go about casting, these characters from the J.R.R. Tolkien, source material from the Lord of the Rings book? How do you do that? If you're Peter Jackson, where do you even fucking begin with that? And the answer is, it's a long and winding list through a lot of these. There are some interesting names that were thrown in the hat with a lot of these characters. There's a lot of interesting things that happened with actually casting these characters. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit right now. So, once upon a time, Sir Patrick Stewart was considered for the role of Gandalf. And there was actually a tape submitted of him and Ian McKellen acting together. And that is where the idea of casting Ian McKellen actually arose, was like, oh, this guy actually seems like he might be good. But other names that were floated / interested in Gandalf, Sir Christopher Lee, who obviously ended up playing Saruman, wanted to play Gandalf once upon a time. But Jackson decided that he would be a better fit for Saruman. Other names that were suggested, and this is kind of somewhat in the Weinstein era of things when Miramax was making these movies, Max von Sydow was thrown out as a name. Morgan Freeman was thrown out as a name. Christopher Plummer was thrown out as a name. Sean Connery was put out as a name.
Oh, that would
all over the fucking map. All over
I think
the
Sean
map,
Connery could have played the
these.
Horse Lord. Sean Connery may have nailed that one.
Yeah. No, I could see that for sure. Sean Connery was approached for the role and did not understand the plot, is what it said. Patrick Stewart apparently was actually offered it and turned it down because he didn't like the script. So there's a couple different, angles, obviously, with these. Anthony Hopkins was approached and turned down the role, apparently.
Of Gandalf.
Of Gandalf. This is all Gandalf right here.
Oh, Jesus.
Sam Neill turned it down because it had a scheduling conflict with Jurassic Park 3. So, they were really all over the map with casting this.
Wow.
Which is just kind of crazy. And I think one other name that was mentioned, which I think is relevant to our interests. Bernard
pass.
Hill. You shall not pass. Frodo. Yeah, that would have been interesting. A casting choice for sure. She talks in her sleep. Galadriel talks in her sleep. Bernard Hill, who ultimately was cast as Theoden, King Theoden in this, was in it, and someone we've talked about a lot between Shroy and Lawrence of Arabia, Peter O'Toole was mentioned as a possibility for Gandalf once upon a time, but it was Sir Ian McKellen that the role came to at long last, and I think we can probably both agree. Good call. Definitely a good call. He's a great Gandalf. What about the others? What about the other characters? Other characters. Lucy Lawless and Nicole Kidman were names considered for Galadriel, but obviously they went with Cate Blanchett.
Good choice.
Boromir. There were some conversations with Nicolas Cage was suggested by New Line, but Peter Jackson, the filmmakers, decided that's not where we want to go with that.
Give me the ring.
Put the ring into the fire. Could have been incredible. Could have been good.
Who knows?
Could have been really bad. Liam Neeson was I think, I don't know if he was actually straight up offered the role of Boromir, but he was sent the script, is what it was. Bruce Willis expressed interest in the role, but obviously did not get it. Sean Bean got it, and started, or at least continued, a legacy of Sean Bean dying in every fucking thing he's in.
One does not simply walk into Mordor.
I mean, can you think about? I mean, some of those Gandalf names, obviously would have been very, very different than what we ended up getting. But I cannot think of a greater disparity between Sean Bean's type of acting and Nicolas Cage's type of acting.
Oh man, have you seen those things on the internet where they do the 90s casting for a particular movie? You've probably seen the Avengers one.
Oh yeah,
Brad Pitt's Iron Man.
Brad Pitt's Thor, or whatever. Tom Cruise's Iron Man, I think.
Yeah, that's
is a pretty classic one.
Exactly. I mean, just total 90s Lord of the Rings. Oh man, ridiculous.
Could have been something there. Could have been something. Oh man. And yeah, I mean, so there are more things that probably could come up, but I think some other interesting stories. Frodo, Frodo's a very important character when you're talking about the Lord of the Rings. He is he's the ring bearer. Elijah Wood was the first actor that was actually cast. He was cast July of 1999. He was a fan of the Lord of the Rings, the book, and he sent in an audition in which he was fully dressed up, and he was selected from over 150 actors that auditioned for the role.
Wow.
Other actors that auditioned for the role of Frodo Baggins included Jake Gyllenhaal,
okay,
as well as Dominic Monaghan, who apparently impressed the filmmakers enough that he got to be Merry. He got to be Meriadoc Brandybuck instead of one Frodo Baggins. So there's that. David Bowie was considered for the role of Elrond, which could have been pretty cool. But I think Peter Jackson basically kind of made the point of just being like almost a little much too much star power there. That could be a little troublesome, perhaps. Orlando Bloom auditioned for the role of Faramir, who we meet in The Two Towers, a role that went to David Wynnum. Denny. So things a little bit different there. And there's other stories here, but perhaps the last story, which we will not finish the story here until we get into the filming process, is that Viggo Mortensen was not originally cast as Aragorn.
Ooh.
You may know this. Daniel Day-Lewis was originally offered the part. He was rumored for a long time, then actually offered the part, turned it down. Here. This is I'm not shitting you with this. Nicolas Cage also received an offer and declined. Vin Diesel auditioned for the role.
No.
Ultimately, even before Viggo was cast, Stuart Townsend was cast as Aragorn. So when filming was set to begin, Stuart Townsend was Aragorn. That's what I'll say for now. Is Stuart Townsend was Aragorn when filming began.
Stuart Townsend. Who is he? I have to look him up.
That's a good question because he didn't do a whole lot. He played the character of Dorian Gray in The League of the Extraordinary Gentlemen with one Sean Connery and his final film role, which could have been Lord of the Rings, but I turned it down so I could be an Alex Sugar. I'm sorry for anyone listening to that. That was probably real bad, but I had fun doing it, so I don't regret it, actually. Stuart Townsend, I don't think, has had a prolific film career, and so one could speculate that maybe whatever ended up happening here, that he did not ultimately portray the role of Aragorn, maybe had an ill effect on his overall career. Certainly didn't give him the exposure that certainly playing Aragorn did for Viggo Mortensen, who I think has had a pretty good film career beyond Lord of the Rings, post Lord of the Rings. So I'll leave it at that. Stuart Townsend's Aragorn when we begin filming, and those are some just ridiculous kind of casting things that what could have been. There were a lot of names that actually got floated around for various characters that those actors actually ended up being involved in The Hobbit, the Hobbit trilogy, sometime down the road. James Corden read for the part of Samwise Gamgee. What could have been there too? Samwise Gamgee, played by James Corden.
Oh no.
Aragorn or Boromir, played by Nicolas Cage. What could have been? What could have been with some of these?
Lucy Lawless as
Lucy
Galadriel.
Lawless as Galadriel, sure. Sure, why not? The thing I will say is, to the credit of these trilogies, a lot of these actors obviously have become really, really successful, I think, since. And I think a lot of the actors that were, at the time they were cast, were not huge actors, which is obviously not true for everyone. Like Ian McKellen, I think, was obviously a very known actor at the time. Elijah Wood was probably more of an unknown. I think some of them were more unknown than others. One casting choice that comes up in The Two Towers particularly is Carl Urban. Who I think at the time was probably not a big had really done a whole lot, I think, at that point, and has done obviously a lot more. We actually just watched an episode of The Boys like within 2 days before we started The Two Towers. So I will say it's kind of the Nicolas Cage sort of thing of like going from Billy Butcher to Eomer is quite jarring. Even though he looks a little bit different, he's quite a bit younger here. It's still kind of funny, actually. But anyway, that's the casting to talk about, and then I think what we're going to talk about next is the actual filming process. Oh, because it was a long production. Because what they did is they made these 3 movies simultaneously. They filmed them all together, and as you can imagine, if you think about most movies, probably take a couple months, 2-3 months to shoot. You think about roughly 3-hour movies, even in the theatrical incarnations. You think about we're talking about fucking epics. That's why we're talking about it. This is epic filmmaking, right? So it's epic filmmaking of an epic trilogy, long, lots of stuff going into these productions.
So many hours of footage. I could only imagine.
Lots of hours of footage. So principal photography lasted 438 days. They shot this movie, all these movies, the trilogy collectively, for over a year.
That's amazing.
Longer than a year. They started in October of 1999 and finished up in December of 2000. And that wasn't it. They actually came back around each year, 2001 through 2003, and did some pickup shots, just to kind of fill in where they needed, once they'd had the time to analyze the footage.
Yeah, 400 hours, we didn't get it.
Right, what else can we do? Let's figure out what we can do here.
400 days,
and
so not 400 hours, 400 days.
Yeah, so they, that gave them, they had an opportunity each year because of the way that these movies were staggered. They each came out one at a time each year in December. There was time to kind of come, go in between and do what they needed to do to tighten it up, add whatever they needed to add for the movie they were editing at the time. But a pseudo fun fact, which I actually thought about saying at the beginning, because I was like, I don't want to say the toe thing. Everyone knows the toe thing. I don't want to do that. But then I was like, maybe I can go one above the toe thing. Is that during these actual pickups, Sean Astin, who plays Samwise Gamgee, actually made a little short film. There was so much going on, during these things, like I guess downtime, I guess you would say, that he made a short film, which is called, I believe The Long and Short of It is what it's called. And I think it's on YouTube and stuff. I will say I didn't actually watch it before recording this. But I think that's
pretty fun fact there.
It's pretty cool. Yeah. And it's not like a Lord of the Rings thing. It's like Sean Astin doing, shit with the Lord of the Rings, cast that he could, get or, crew and whatever involved in this. So I think Peter Jackson plays a character of some sort in it. And it's a short film. I don't know actually how long it is or anything like that, but it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I think so. So that's kind of what it did. They shot everything on film. Go ahead.
So they're shooting these movies back to back to back, or not back to back to back. They're shooting them collectively. Is that what's happening here?
Correct. They are not shooting these things sequentially.
So there's footage that's they collect footage on Return of the King, while they're doing stuff for The Hobbit. Like, who is that? That's all producer, the mastermind behind putting all this shit together. Listen, we know that we're doing these 3 movies. We know that these 3 movies take place in New Zealand. We know that this is the location that we want to shoot for in Return of the King. The 2 towers for this one sequence and the Fellowship. These are the mountain ranges that we need to shoot, blah, 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 blah. We're going to get it all now. I mean, that
pretty much. I think that was, and this is probably something we really didn't touch on a whole lot. And even when we talked about, the pre-production when we were doing part 1 of this sort of thing, is everything was pretty clearly mapped out in advance. Like, they're making all these costumes and shit because they kind of know they have a plan.
Fuck.
This time is blocked out for this, XYZ. Like, we're going to be spending a year plus doing this, but we know what we're doing. And so, yeah, there's a little bit more to that. I guess I'll get into that in a second.
That's amazing. Like
everything was, no, it's absurd. It kind of boggles the mind of how could you even think to organize that?
A production of that level. That's incredible. Just these extended editions are Return of the King's, I think 4.5 hours.
Yeah, no, it's 4+. Which includes the 20-minute, fan credits or whatever, but still, it's long. And collectively, there's in terms of edited stuff, there's 11+ hours of just pure movie, not including credits, which isn't obviously to account for the many, many hours of footage that they would have captured that didn't end up in the final cuts of any of these movies. So yeah, it's a fuck ton of shit that they had to pull off. So it was quite the feat to plan it, execute it, and you had your annual pickup shots and everything, but it's not like they reshot a fucking movie, in between years, being like, we fucked this one, let's fix it. Like, no, it was really just supplementing what had already been done during this, epic year plus shoot of these 3 fucking gargantuan movies. I mean, I think they probably saved money by doing it that way, right?
Absolutely,
instead of having
for
to
sure.
rebuild sets, sign actors
It's
to new
probably the
contracts
only way
after the
that this
first
movie
one's
could
wildly
be
successful.
made,
Yeah, no, totally. And at least certainly for the amount of money that it ended up costing, which was expensive at the time. But again, as we talked about with Fellowship, like, not that expensive for what it is. For what the final product is for these movies, it's wildly cheap, even for the time.
Yeah, it's a tremendous value. Like I said, I think that without the groundwork and everybody putting in, without the foresight of how to shoot, when to shoot, where to shoot, what's needed, and everything else, the production team here is really just. It's really mind-boggling. That's crazy.
Well, and here's the thing is, when you do that much work ahead of time, it really pays off, and you see it in the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
That's true.
You don't do that work ahead of time, it doesn't pay off, and you see that in the Hobbit trilogy, which we're not going to cover. We've talked about one already. Shout out to Ink to Film yet again. We talked about An Unexpected Journey, the first movie in that trilogy with them. Those movies went off the rails because there was not as much intricate planning that happened ahead of time, and it really, really hampered, I think, the overall production of those films, where it was Peter Jackson flying by the seat of his pants, and that's not the way to do something of that scale. This is the way to do it. He knew how to. He did it right in the first place, and then he was rushed, doing that, and it really showed. Obviously, there's a separate conversation of why the fuck is this 300-page children's novel 12 hours of content, the same way that, the ridiculous epic that Tolkien wrote with The Lord of the Rings, was the same runtime. Like, that's obviously a problem in and of itself too, but yeah. Anyway, they shot it all on super 35mm film, which I think kind of helps with some of a timeless look to it, with certainly, just the actual footage that was shot. Film just kind of has that sort of classic quality to it. Certainly that shooting in digital in the early 2000s, I think, would have dated it a lot more, a la Attack of the Clones or something like that. They used over 150 different filming locations for this movie. They utilized 7 different filming units throughout the production process. So, it's more than just Peter Jackson. There's second unit directors directing shit simultaneously, Peter Jackson overseeing the whole production process, but lots and lots of crew members, lots and lots of teams making this thing happen. In fact, at the height of production, the quote is that there was 2,400 people working on it at any given time. So that's it's
incredible.
It's a lot of people. It's a lot of people. That it's more than just Peter Jackson. It's more than just any of the cast. It's more than any, just one producer or whoever making this happen. And it is a gargantuan team, putting their best efforts together to make this work. So we talked about it a little bit already. It was not shot sequentially, because most movies are not shot sequentially. They film around, they plan it around filming locations, availability, cast availability, etc. Some like Liv Tyler wasn't on set, in the same way that a lot of the actors are. She went in and out of set. She'd come on for like a week, shoot her shit, and then leave, and then come back, etc. And so, that was kind of unusual, different from the rest of the cast. But that's the sort of thing where it's just like, you build that into your schedule. But what they did do, I think, to benefit the movie, is that they did film principally a lot of the Fellowship of the Ring stuff towards the beginning. Particularly with the 4 hobbits together, and that was intentionally done because they wanted those 4 actors to kind of bond together, to kind of have to grow together and kind of I guess feel out these characters together, so that when they are kind of split up, as we see in the plot of the movies, that it feels more impactful. Like there is sort of a longing between these characters where they're from the Shire, and they're separated and they're off on their own quests, adventures, and stuff like that. And that kind of gives it a little bit more weight of like, maybe one day we'll get back home and be with our friends again. So it's kind of interesting that they did that. Now, to pick up on the thread of Stuart Townsend, the producers were not a fan of Stuart Townsend's casting. Peter Jackson said, no, I want him to be the guy. I think he should be the guy. And then 3 days into filming on the films, Peter Jackson said, "Oh yeah, no, I think you guys were right." And so
no.
They deemed that he was too young to play Aragorn, which is
yeah, I'd agree.
I'd have to check the ages, but Viggo Mortensen, let's see, was born in 1958. Stuart Townsend was born in 1972. So there's a 15-year, roughly age difference between those two. I think they wanted someone that was older for the role. And so ultimately they did decide we will move on from Stuart Townsend. And I think there's a little bit of a kerfuffle of the contract that he had, obviously, which is, understandably so. Like you're hired to be part of this big fucking epic film trilogy, and then you get shit canned a few days in. Obviously that could be complicated, but before they went to Viggo, they went to Maximus himself. They went to Russell Crowe, and Russell Crowe decided he did not want to do it because he felt that it would be kind of too similar to Maximus, especially because this is around the same time that Gladiator was made. So he declined the role. And so Viggo Mortensen came along, took the role. He took the role because his son was a fan of The Lord of the Rings, and he quickly, I think, kind of fit right in. From what it sounds like, he kind of became a beloved member of the cast very quickly. And I think we can all say, no disrespect to Stuart Townsend, Viggo Mortensen's a great Aragorn. He, they got it right, at least in terms of what he did. So that was the drama there. In terms of the filming stuff, and this will somewhat bleed into, well, I'll say this thing first. Helm's Deep, which is a big sequence we're going to talk about in the Two Towers very shortly, that took 4 months alone. That whole sequence of filming the Battle of Helm's Deep was 4 months. 4 grueling months where the actors were subjected to fucking pelting rain machines and just fucking nightmare, not millions, but thousands of extras involved just to make that sort of happen. It was an incredible feat to get it all to kind of come together in the way that it did. Now the other thing, which again it will bleed, I think, into the next thing I'll talk about, which will be the last thing that I'll talk about here, is that Ian McKellen actually didn't film a whole lot with the Hobbit actors in the way that you might have expected him to, and the reason for that is because what this movie did is because you're talking about halflings and hobbits who are quite shorter than your average men. You're talking about dwarves who are shorter than your average men, but also taller than hobbits. You have a lot of different, characters of different sizes and scales and stuff like that. And you have Ian McKellen, who's, I don't know, probably at least 6 feet tall. He ended up shooting with a lot of the doubles for the characters, like the actual height doubles, the ones that were more height appropriate for those characters. Elijah Wood, was 5'6". He's not a tall man or anything like that, but he's still 2 feet too tall to play a hobbit, in terms of actual height and stuff like that. John Rhys Davies, as I mentioned, he's like 6'5" or some shit. Clearly too tall for a dwarf. But they made it work. But yeah, Ian McKellen, kind of had to play with the people that weren't really
the characters,
playing these characters, because and you see it a lot in the when you watch these movies, is for the most part when it's wide shots, you see them from the back. They're kind of running or something like that. And it's just like...
They're probably running,
It's probably like a kid or something like that who's like the appropriate size actually there. There's one scene in the Two Towers, I think, when it's Frodo and Sam, and they're like composited next to Faramir and stuff, and it looks really fucking bad.
Yes, I noted that.
It's like the one time in these 2 movies thus far where I'm like, oh, that looks horrendous. Everything else looks pretty okay for a 20-plus-year-old movie, but that shit looked probably bad at the time. Like they couldn't quite pull off that shot in the way they wanted it to be done. But a lot of what they did throughout filming was employ visual effects techniques to to be able to convincingly have these actors portray these characters and be able to do it in camera as much as possible. So they used a lot of forced perspective, to basically have different, like the different constructions of the set, so that when you have a normal-sized Elijah Wood running around, he looks small in comparison to a regular-sized Ian McKellen, for example. They used a lot of scale doubles throughout, just again to kind of keep that things. And something that was interesting is, again, like I said, the dwarves are intended to be taller than the hobbits, so it actually worked out because Elijah Wood is 5'6" or whatever, and John Rhys Davies is 6'5". He's a foot taller than Elijah Wood, so there's a lot of times where they're both, in the same shot, and their height difference is actually accurate to what those characters would be. It's just that, in general, if you weren't filming from the waist up, then you'd have to pull, 3 feet away from each of them to get it to more accurate to where they were supposed to be, or 2 or 3 feet or whatever. So that was something they did in terms of that. They used a lot of miniatures, which they called bigatures, because they were, I think, 1:4 scale that they used in terms of like, bringing a lot of these, like a lot of the cities and stuff. We think about Osgiliath, which we see a little bit here with Faramir, Khazad-dûm, and the Fellowship of the Ring, and when they're in the Mines of Moria, Helm's Deep, the whole fortress of Helm's Deep. Like, they used a lot of quote unquote bigatures to film those things. They filmed the actors, I think, and sometimes on like a green screen or something like that, and kind of did a lot of composition to incorporate the live action actors on top of these quote unquote bigatures and stuff like that. So I mean, I actually kind of can't really explain the level of visual effects that were kind of woven into the practical filmmaking of it. It's really clever, really ingenious. They spent a lot of time like hashing this out because of the intricacies of these settings, because of the scale of the characters themselves relative to other characters in the same frame and the same whatever. And so there's so much that went into that like I'm scratching the surface of it, throwing it out there as being like it's not as easy as they would do it today of just being like CG everything's CG.
But right.
There was a lot of really clever stuff that they did to make it kind of a lot more natural and practical, and in a way that is a bit more seamless than you might have expected otherwise. So anyway, that's that. Scratching the surface, but that's that. I'm going to leave it at that. I feel like I've been here a little too long now. I've overstayed my welcome, and I think we need to talk about The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, but again, we'll talk about the post-production stuff and the reception of The Lord of the Rings trilogy when we talk about The Return of the King, but now we must talk about The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, which was...
Two Towers.
Yeah, that's right. We got to talk about it. It came out December 18th of 2002, was written by Fran Walsh, Philippa Boyens, Stephen Sinclair, and Peter Jackson, directed, of course, by Peter Jackson, based on The Two Towers by J.R.R. Tolkien, Volume 2 of The Lord of the Rings. Big, long cast list. It's even longer than last time, I think, because it's mostly everyone that was in the Fellowship, plus a few more. Stars Elijah Wood, Ian McKellen, Viggo Mortensen, Sean Astin, Andy Serkis, Billy Boyd, Dominic Monaghan, John Rhys Davies, Orlando Bloom, Bernard Hill, Christopher Lee, Hugo Weaving, Miranda Otto, David Winham, Brad Dourif, Carl Urban. I was trying to do butcher. I fucked it. Liv Tyler, Kate Blanchett, Sean Bean, and Craig Parker. In The Two Towers, while Frodo and Sam edge closer to Mordor, with the help of the shifty Gollum, the divided fellowship makes a stand against Sauron's new ally, Saruman, and his hordes of Isengard. They're taking the hobbits to Isengard. It's a meme. It's an internet meme for those who've been around.
There's a lot going on in this movie.
There's a lot going on, so let's do it. Full spoilers for The Two Towers. You have not seen this movie in some time, right?
It's been some time. It took me 5 days to watch this movie. I watched it in almost hour-long increments.
To be fair. What'd you think coming back to it after all this time? Fresh off Fellowship of the Ring.
So I think this movie falls behind Fellowship. If I were to rank
enough.
them,
Fellowship is still the best
Fellowship is the best in my book so far.
of the first two, anyway. Sure.
We'll compare it to Return of the King, and we'll compare the Two Towers to Return of the King too. But so far my standings are the Fellowship and then the Two Towers. There is more use of CG in this movie than there was, I feel, in the other, in Fellowship. Particularly with, like you say, there's the shot of Frodo and Bilbo and is it Boromir? Boromir's dead. It's
Boromir's dead. Faramir.
Yes. There's that. And you get the dogs. I feel like the dogs didn't.
The wargs. The wargs look a little dated at this point.
They do look dated.
Some of it's inconsistent. I think some of it is dated looking. The wargs definitely do not look good. But I feel like the Ents, who are all completely CG, maybe it's helpful because they're just fucking walking trees. I thought they looked fine.
Right. Yeah,
you know what I mean?
thought they were totally good.
But like obviously very much realized through the use of CG almost exclusively.
I thought they were totally fine. The Ents were. Yeah, so I mean, really and truly, and also the Ents, mostly everything with the Ents, with the exception of like the big battle at the tower. Mostly all of it takes place in like shadowy. It's kind of like,
sure, kind of helps disguise it maybe a little bit.
Yeah. Whereas the wargs are like in your face, But either way, it's an old movie, man. We're talking about a 20-year-old movie, so
it gets a pass in some ways.
Right.
It was groundbreaking at the time, and inevitably some things just will not stand the test of time.
Yeah, and I think that's one super strength of Fellowship is its reliance on practical effects and
gives it more of a timeless quality than even this one has.
Right. With that being said, I think this movie does utilize practical effects to the fullest extent. Because I mean, it's big. It's you get a lot of things going on here that require special effects, and they use them.
Yeah.
And they use them.
It's
very
big,
effectively.
Big fantasy scale things of creatures, orcs, men, elves, whoever. There's a lot going on.
Right. So with that being said,
they have
I think
a
they do a
principal
good
character
job.
that's fully CG. We didn't even talk about that. Fucking Gollum
What is it?
is
Gollum.
completely mocap CG, etc. So
looks better in certain times than he does others.
Yeah, but again, for something that's 2 decades old, not bad.
Not bad at all. They spent a tremendous amount of time on that one character, and it shows. I mean, he looks amazing. Yeah, so I think that this movie, the big thing that draws me in with Fellowship is just the weight of the journey, the companionship, and like the fact it's such a daunting task, right? And the emotionality behind that and what it means and everything else. I think it really nails it. This one's more of a, I think the Two Towers is more, and you can correct my word if it's wrong, but I feel like this is more of an objective movie. Like the things that are happening are in response to the thing that's happening, and these are the things that we have to do. It's not, should I undertake this journey and how am I dealing with it? Everything else, everything that happens in this movie is mostly like the dominoes are falling, and this is how we need to respond.
Everything that happens in Fellowship is setting everything in motion, and this is just kind of following on from the natural consequences of those things happening. If that makes sense.
Yeah, everything's in response. So it isn't until Samwise gets his speech when Frodo he's about to give himself to a ring wraith. And then Samwise,
that's very close to the end.
Samwise gives him a heartfelt speech about things. I thought that was excellent. And I feel like there was one more speech. I think maybe at the very end of the movie. That was awesome. But aside from that, a lot of the emotionality that I really enjoyed in Fellowship is largely absent in this movie. And what we get instead is some badass stuff. And that's totally okay too.
In spades.
It's
a very different feeling movie than Fellowship.
Yeah, this feels like almost like a fantasy war epic, which is
it feels almost. I mean, it's obviously something that would almost certainly inspired by Lord of the Rings. Both, I mean, Game of Thrones. It feels somewhat Game of Thronesy, especially when you're talking about like an almost hour-long battle sequence. That's very Game of Thronesy. And again, I use it as a more recent comparison because obviously one of these things did it first, and it was the Lord of the Rings. You know what I mean? So Game of Thrones feels Lord of the Ringsy in some ways, but this is almost more grounded in some ways. Particularly, it is and it isn't. Like obviously, you have big fucking Uruk-hai and orcs and whatever shit going on and walking, talking trees. It's not realistic. It's not like Game of Thrones necessarily, but it does have this sort of weight and feel. Whereas I think Fellowship has a little bit of whimsy to it, especially in the beginning when you're talking about the Shire.
Totally.
When you're talking about before they really get into the formation of the Fellowship of the Ring, before they get on this quest to destroy the One Ring. It's like...
That's what it was. I had to cut you off. I'm sorry. I was talking about the emotionality of these two characters.
Yeah, go ahead.
So you get Samwise's speech at the end, But you also get... is it Pepin or Mary? I can't remember. With the Ents, their whole journey with the Ents.
I mean, I think Mary is the one that's really stop taking so long to make your fucking vote. How could you decide any other way?
Aren't you a part of this world and this and that? You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. I think that's Mary, and I think it might be Pippin is the one that kind of steers them. Like, well, why don't we go south instead?
Yeah, and then they go and they show the Ent, the fucking tear down forest and stuff, and it's because those two guys are just like a major pain in the ass, like the entire series, like entire thing. They're
I don't think he knows about second breakfast.
Yeah, just assholes. Anyways, they really step into their own this movie. I mean, without them, what the fuck would have happened? You know what I mean? They're essential.
Yeah, I mean, the Ents really Helm's Deep would have been one without the intervention of the Ents because they're really not there. But I think in terms of sabotaging Isengard, turning, basically destroying Saruman's influence on things, which has obviously been a huge, is the reason that Helm's Deep is such a conflict in the first place, is because he was breeding these fucking armies. Yeah, I mean, they certainly prove their mettle, prove their worth, in terms of why they went on the journey in the first place and the kind of things that they are capable of realizing.
I think it was, the moment I'm talking about, like I said, I've watched this over the course of a week, so it's hard, but I think what it was is when he was like, listen, maybe we don't belong here. Maybe we need to go back to the Shire.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, there won't be a Shire to go back to.
Yeah.
If we let this happen.
It's great. It's so good. Like the biggest meaningful moments come from the smallest, most insignificant people in the series, and it's just powerful stuff.
And right, yeah. And
but anyways, those moments for me, the moments that I really dig into, they're fleeting in this movie. And so, anyways, we're talking about badass stuff. We're not talking about like tear-wrenching stuff. You're talking about. I cut you off because I remember that Merry and Pippin shit. Sorry.
Well, I lost my place then too. I don't know. That's okay. It'll come to me when I edit it and be like, oh, that's what I was talking about, you son of a bitch. I don't know. I don't know. I completely lost my place, but I'm happy to talk about anything
I think
else.
you were talking about Helm's Deep.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, Helm's Deep was pretty crazy.
I guess maybe that's what it was. Yeah, compared to Fellowship has the whimsy, it has the sort of fun feeling tone to it, and then things get a little progressively serious. This is serious from minute one, and it continues to be serious through the end. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, and this kind of gets into my into my more overall thoughts on it, it's a middle chapter. You know, they have invested into this journey to destroy the One Ring. They are committed to doing so, and until they fulfill that quest, the opportunity for fun and the Fellowship banding together and having a good time is gone. Everything's been fractured at this point. Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli are really only going off on this quest because they think Merry and Pippin have been, because they know they've been taken by the orcs. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that's what they're doing. And then they think they're dead at one point, and then, Aragorn breaks his toe or whatever. We talked about it. But that's their involvement for now. You know what I mean? And then for the other characters that we follow to Fellowship, well, Boromir's fucking dead. Gandalf is dead, sort of. We'll get to that. Frodo and Sam are just kind of slaving away at this quest, and you can see the impact that the ring is having on Frodo. Frodo is not a joyful little hobbit in the same way that he was, or that Merry and Pippin almost still are. Frodo is like fucking worn down by this shit.
Definitely.
I mean?
Can't do it.
You see the manifestation of what that looks like in Gollum, who is, a pitiful creature who's slimy and nasty to look at, and
everybody just fucking throws around,
stuff.
Grabs him by his lanky neck and fucking throws him around.
Fucking beat the shit out of Gollum all the time. No wonder he doesn't like people. No wonder he talks to himself as, it's the hobbits. It's
all fucked up, man. It's not right. They're real shitty. Anyways.
Yeah, they're pretty shitty towards Gollum. And at the end of the day, all right, Gollum does kind of suck, but he's a tragic creature at the same time too. There's a way that Frodo could become like Gollum. And we saw, when we got scary Bilbo, for a second in Fellowship, you see even the subtle influences of the ring, even when it's not as active. And right now, it's like you have the ring wraiths actively looking for it. Sauron is up and running, with his own tower in the eye. It's like this is as bad as it can be. The ring is just corrupting. Every second, the ring is corrupting Frodo, and trying to tempt him to just giving up on his quest. And so, yeah, I mean, it's a middle chapter, and it's not intended to be the completion of a journey for anyone like that. By its very design, it's kind of tough because it's like you don't have the fun anymore. Everything just kind of sucks. Everyone's just dirty and grimy. Everyone needs a fucking shower. Aragorn's disgusting looking. He's eating some disgusting ass soup from Eowyn.
We haven't even talked about her yet.
But everyone's they're in a rough spot, and it's just you're just trudging along. You're running along if you're fucking Legolas, Aragorn and Gimli. You're running everywhere.
Unlimited stamina.
But if you're Frodo and Sam are not running, to their credit, they're just trudging. They're doing it wisely. They're like we're not running. No. That's not how this works. But yeah, it's everyone's kind of in the muck. In a shitty situation. They're going through fucking marshes with dead people and getting sucked into it. Everything that can happen that is bad that could happen is kind of happening, throughout this movie. Like it's all of the trials and tribulations of, is this even worth it? Like, what is this quest for? So yeah, that's kind of where you are with this movie. But I think the things that give it almost a breath of fresh air compared to Fellowship, because I think if you're talking about just Frodo and Sam in isolation, like the Gollum is an interesting character, very well done. You're talking about the Legolas, Aragorn, and Gimli, like they're fun and they're interesting, and their storyline obviously goes on to Helm's Deep by the end. But I think what keeps this movie fresh and interesting, that sets it apart from Fellowship. And I agree. I agree. Fellowship's definitely my favorite, my preferred of the two, is the introduction of these new characters. So this is a very Rohan prominent, Rohan forward movie. Yeah. And almost like the first hour is really setting up this, how Saruman has infiltrated Rohan and affected the mind of the king. And honestly, I've seen these movies a lot more recently since I married a big Lord of the Rings fan, who Anna's not going to make an appearance on this episode, but hopefully she'll make a return appearance for Return of the King. Just figured I'd throw that out there. one of the things, like I've seen these a lot of recently, so I have a lot more that sticks in my mind. But back in the day when I didn't watch these all the time, when I maybe put them on every few years, the things that always stood out to me from this movie was Theoden with the fucking fucked up, just completely out of his mind, scraggly hair, shit, and Grima just being all wormy and slimy and shit. And that's really not much of this movie. Like, Theoden is full-on Theoden, like, by the hour mark. And there's 2 hours after that where he's himself, you know what I mean?
Right.
But for whatever reason, that was the thing
that's what sticks out, yeah.
And then you have Éowyn, obviously, who's his niece, and you have his nephew, Éomer, who gets kicked out pretty early on and has a pivotal role towards the end, but is kind of largely absent other than that first hour. So anyway, why don't we talk about the Rohan stuff? Is memorable for you? You remember that? What do you think about it though?
I always remember. Is it Worm Tongue or
Grima Worm Tongue? Yeah.
Yeah, I always remember him all pale and shit, and
creeping after Éowyn.
Yeah. Hey. And he says the same thing in the king's ear. Hey, don't trust them. Ooh, yeah. It's like, what the fuck are you saying over there, dude? Get out of his ear. Heck, I want to know.
Look at this guy. How could he not be evil?
Yeah. At what point do you let that guy creep up on your ear, right, to fuck you up?
Yeah.
Like you're the I call him the horse lord. I'm sure he's called something like that in the book. He seems like a horse lord.
They're all like horse lords, like those people.
The king of Rohan, right?
Hiram.
And you're that guy, and this creepy pale dude walks up on you and, hey, let me tell you a story. Let me get up in that ear. Let me talk to you about something.
Once upon a time, there was a white wizard.
What are you doing? Get out of there. You just fucking give him a slap. What are you doing? Anyways, he corrupts this guy, and he just gets old and shit somehow. And that's always stuck with me. That's the thing I always remember about this movie. Yeah, right.
just fucking, just absolutely fucked up.
Yeah, and I remember that, and I remember Legolas riding the shield, surfing the shield down the stairs. I do remember
surfing the shield, and then he does the thing where he gets on the horse. He swings around and shit.
Yeah, I do remember that. Yes,
I think Legolas's antics get progressively more ridiculous throughout the trilogy, like the feats that he's capable of pulling off.
The tusk surf. There's
an elephant shit. Yeah, in Return of the King, I think. Yeah, so
that one sticks out.
And then in The Hobbit, he jumps up the falling stairs as they're like breaking apart.
Yeah, he's fucking crazy. That one, Legolas.
Yeah.
So, anyways, Rohan. The worm tongue was a thing that stood out. You have Dread, which I thought he was awesome in this movie.
Karl Urban, yeah.
Yeah, Karl Urban.
He's good, man. He's fucking good.
Yeah. And then you have the thirsty niece. Like, Aragon, here's some soup. Aragon, you're a real man, Aragon. Ooh, Aragon, ooh. She's always cooing after him, and he's like, I mean, this bitch, what is she doing?
He's respectful.
He doesn't want to eat her nasty-ass soup.
Yeah, I asked Anna. I was like, "What do you think's in that soup?" She's like, maybe some sort of fish. I don't know. I was like,
It kind of looked like fish, maybe crab or something. I don't know. It's a chunk of meat.
He didn't care for it that much. Let's put it that way.
Uh-oh.
I like how Gimli was like, "Oh no, I couldn't."
He spilled it all over his hands. It's like, oh fuck, it's hot.
There's little moments of physical comedy in this movie when you don't expect it, and it gives it in a movie that is, I think, otherwise, as we've kind of talked about, a little bit more oppressive and a bit more serious than The Fellowship is overall in tone. And there's like, the goofy gags of like, 42, 43, between Legolas and Gimli and whatnot. Like, that's kind of like baked in humor. But like that sort of little bit of physical comedy there just makes Aragorn more personable, just kind of humanizes him a little bit. Of just, even Aragorn, the 90-year-old man or whatever, doesn't like shitty soup either. And he's like, What's this fucking chick's deal?
I like how he gets away with like saying like 2 words to her throughout the whole movie. He doesn't say shit to her hardly at all. You know?
Well, she's eating it all up.
just kind of like gives a half grand nods and then he gets pulled away, you know.
He's polite, and that's it. That's all it takes sometimes is just being polite.
Anyways, they definitely overdid her character for sure. At least in this movie. I don't get it.
Well, I guess the thing is, it's like, I mean, obviously we have the benefit of having seen Return of the King, as well. But it's like, are they actually trying to set up? Like, I think at this point, if you don't know the story, if you haven't seen the story, I guess there's an argument to be made. It's like, well, Arwen is leaving. She's going to leave Middle Earth to be with her people and remain. I guess so that she doesn't have to live with Aragorn through his mortality and stuff like that. And so maybe there's this idea that, well, Aragorn and Arwen aren't meant to be after all, even though clearly in Fellowship it's very much that sort of thing. There's a lot of stuff with Elrond being a huge fucking dick, I think, in this movie, being like, you need to leave. Like, you will know nothing but death. He will die, and you will be sad, and there will be a sad flashback. And you will be sad, and you will be the only one that's alive, so you will be even sadder because no one else will be alive because you will be sad and everyone else will be dead.
All of human race will be dead. You are by yourself.
Anyway, you should come hang out with us, your people. Otherwise you will know nothing but death. So it's like, all right, it's pretty heavy-handed of being like, all right, maybe there's an argument to be made that Arwen should, in fact, leave these shores and, go be with their people, in which case, all right, in come the Aragorn Eowyn ship. Does it make sense? She's not really a princess of Rohan, and he's the theoretical king of Gondor. Maybe there's a union of the two, kingdoms of man that, like, all right, you could kind of, figure out there's a way that sort of makes sense. But I don't really buy it at the same time either, because he clearly does not care for her. He tolerates her. He's nice to her. She's nice. He doesn't resent the attention. He's just like, okay, and like, it moves on with his life, whereas she's clearly doting over his every fucking move. And he fell, my lady. When he fucking gets chucked off the cliff for a bit and goes swimming for a little while, it's like a big, like, kind of, moment where she's like, oh God, like, all right, well, who's the next eligible suitor? but not really, like she's fucking torn up about it.
Yeah.
And it's like, all right. I mean, I guess the question is like, is there ever a moment where we as an audience are convinced those two might actually be destined together? Maybe Arwen is not the one that makes the most sense. Even though Aragorn clearly loves Arwen, maybe there's an argument to be made that it's not the most savvy thing for him to do is to have that love, because her family clearly fucking doesn't want this for her, and whatnot. So I don't know. Again, I guess I don't really buy it because, and part of that obviously is knowing where the story goes to some extent, but I don't know. It's kind of funny for me, if nothing else.
I thought it was hilarious. I can't remember Return of the King.
It's almost played more. It's played more for comedy here, like in the way that I view it, more than like, oh shit, maybe Aragorn is tempted to.
I got no temptation whatsoever.
No, he very much felt it's like, okay, I'm gonna continue being polite because that's what I do. But I'm respectfully. No, thank you, ma'am. No, thank you.
Yeah. So there is that in this movie that's funny. I think one of the most badass moments is one of the most subtle. And this is when you find out what the elves are all about. Like, the elves have been kind and gentle. You have it's Arwen, right? She whispers a little bit of magic into the river, and then the horses come galloping in the form of, like, the water.
Oh yeah, Arwen, right?
Arwen. Galadriel is this mystical witch elf in the woods. But does she do a little bit of magic? She does a little bit of magic. She can, like, talk in your mind and stuff. But nothing of there's been no overt use of power, right? It's all been kind of subtle and very just mystical, until Helm's Deep. Man is on their fucking death. I mean, they're just on their they're
it's
knocking on
the
death's
Battle
door.
of Thermopylae or whatever, but brought into the Lord of the Rings, where it's 300 versus 10,000 or whatever.
Exactly.
And this is a last gasp. We are in our fortress, and we hope that it will hold.
Rohan refuses to fucking call for help for whatever. I'd rather just kill my guys rather than just ask and then not get answered. Fuck it. We're done. Just
we know that again, future knowledge, which is somewhat in here. The Steward of Gondor is a fucking loser asshole. So
they wouldn't have answered.
So they probably would not have answered. Let's put it that way.
Could have fucking asked at the very least, but. Either way, I digress. So they're about to they're facing off, a bunch of old people and kids facing off against all the Orc.
They got little that kid with the long hair. They're like, all right, whatever your fucking face is, you got a sword. Let's go.
Yeah. And then
you're a farmer. I don't give a shit.
In come the elves.
Yeah.
They march in. They're all like prim and proper. They have their hoods and their bows, and they just march in.
An ethereal quality to them.
Yeah.
It's just like. Oh man,
it's serious. And then they do this. Like they all turn their head at once and they just fucking move. It's like, oh shit, things.
They know what they're doing.
Yeah, things just changed, in a major way. I thought that was awesome. It was like it was subtle, but it wasn't so subtle. It's like we're here to help.
Nah, it's fucking hype.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. It's like. There was once an alliance between man and elves. We shall honor that alliance once again. It's like, oh, fuck yeah. Yeah. That's some badass shit.
Yeah.
And it's like this is world-ending shit. Sauron is this ultimate evil. He was once this ultimate evil that was vanquished. We cannot let him rise again. Now he's got Saruman, one of these fucking several, wizards in this world. Like, you got to band together and make a stand, and it's just it's
age old tale, man. Yeah,
it's people with common enemies just uniting and banding together, and it's it's just cool.
And there's none bigger.
What it is. It's just fucking cool.
There's none bigger than the trees. It's said best by the
trees. Yeah,
by the hobbits. Aren't you a part of this world?
Yeah,
I mean, we understand it's not your battle, but you got to pick a side. I mean, this is world-ending shit, and they do.
Yeah. And to be fair, they only pick a side once it implicates them directly. It's
sure,
just like, oh
just
shit,
like everybody else
has been burned out. But once that happens, the answer, they make quick work of Isengard. They fucking break that dam, flood it. They're destroying. I mean, they're just stomping on fucking orcs left and right. Breaking their shit, throwing it down. I think there's the one Ent that gets on fire and then just goes and blows up shit. It's like they are. And Saruman's like, fuck, what's going on? Dude's just panicking. He's just running left and right. In his little tower, looking around like, oh shit, fuck, shit, what's going on? Oh fuck,
the forest is alive, and then all the orcs at the end when
when they go into the forest, and then it just rustles and everyone,
that.
They're all crushed to dust. Yep, that'll take care of those orcs, no problem.
It's awesome. Where the fuck were the trees?
You know what another hype moment is in Helm's Deep along the lines of the elves is like, all right, that's enough. It's enough to at least keep the orcs occupied, but they still are breaking through. And there's like some fucking brutal moments in Helm's Deep. There's a moment where the battering ram goes through and it fucking impales the one guy and pulls him back into the door as it's coming through. I'm like, there's moments, and there's these people like fucking flying around when they do that big explosion. When the ragdolls, the orc comes charging in. Yeah, there's people ragdolling off the side. It's like the bomb robot from the creator, just running in.
Take him down. He just refuses to get, and he's in like a gimp costume. It's like a gimp orc,
Yeah. It's like what? He just likes to get blown up. That's all.
He just runs in there. Yeah, incredible stuff. Also,
but just some moments of brutality. But go.
I was gonna say the way that everybody is able to communicate across this ridiculous battlefield in Helm's Deep is
yelling.
Just hard to believe. You have specifically when the king says, retreat to the keep, and he's down there by, Aragorn's down there fighting all the orcs and shit. He's like, oh, the king's talking to me. We need to return to the keep. They all go back. One part I thought was one line that was hilarious was when Aragorn throws Gimli over onto the bridge.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, don't tell the elf. I think all the combat stuff was just really well done, hilarious, and
it was
very entertaining,
well, and choreographed, entertaining, and again, just kind of visceral and brutal, and not. I mean, I guess there is a decapitation. I think every one of these movies has a fucking decapitation of some sort. We got it with the Uruk and Fellowship of the Ring with Aragorn. I think I talked about the cool ass fucking shit, pulling the sword out, fucking cutting his head off. I think we get a little bit here. But it's brutal and it's visceral without being bloody. It's not a rated R movie. It clearly was not trying to be a rated R movie. It's done in a fairly bloodless fashion. But you can see people getting fucked up, getting fucking cleaved. and not in a way where like, a head's getting smashed in or whatever. It's kind of fantasy violence in a sort of way, and maybe it's, if it's orcs, it's easier to swallow than it is if it was, men getting cleaved in half. But it is sort of that level of brutality that you'd want in a huge battle sequence like this. It's really, really well done where, you feel, every blow in it, and it's grimy and it's fucking raining and, it's just, I don't know, man. It's a really, really well done battle sequence. And obviously it needs to be because at the end of the day, it's kind of the third act of this movie, for a middle chapter that doesn't, it's very much taking what Fellowship started, handing it off to the Return of the King for the the epic finale. This is the hardest job of the three movies of like, how do we make just the middle of this story interesting enough that it still feels like its own film, right? And I think the solution of making the third act this huge battle sequence in a way that we've never seen to this point, because Fellowship doesn't have anything like this.
No, totally different movie.
Like, I think it's a really, really smart decision to end it in such a bombastic but like intentionally so fashion where it's really engaging in a way that we haven't seen in the 6 hours or whatever leading up to this point. Yeah, I enjoyed that.
In a lot of ways, being that this movie is so much a continuation of the first movie,
right?
It's almost like now we have 2/3 of an epic movie. You know what I mean? If you were to make these, you could make these movies as one, and it would be acceptable. It'd be fucking absurd for a 12-hour movie. But
right, yeah.
But
or if you're Harvey Weinstein, you could just do it in 2 hours, right?
Yeah,
it's not that much story,
right.
Of course. So,
but this, unlike a lot of, it just speaks volumes of the series of the the trilogy. It's I think I said it before in Fellowship. I don't think there's anything quite as epic. I don't think this is.
No, man, this is.
It's some epic shit.
Because this, it's a fantasy setting, and you have so many characters, and it's just, I don't know, the scope of it obviously is ridiculous and impressive, but like the words I'm working, the word I was looking for, the stakes of it. I mean, it's the difference between the fucking end of the world and not, and it's like, I guess in some ways you could talk about like war movies and stuff kind of bleeding into that, and like, there's a lot more personal stakes when you're talking about like Gladiator, for example, for Maximus, or for like Troy, you're talking about obviously some bigger stakes for like for a people, for a kingdom, for a nation, for whatever, for an empire. For Lawrence of Arabia, it's somewhat a group of peoples and stuff, but this is like. And again, it's a fictional place, it's fictional people, it's a fictional world, but like it is the world at stake. It's like if Sauron wins, the world will plunge into darkness. The Shire will get burnt to a crisp. All of men will be killed and slaughtered, and and it's just like what a horrific kind of reality that would be of just Sauron just ruling all. And it's a classic trope, obviously, of good versus evil, but it's on like the grandest scale possible here. Yeah. So that's why it just feels so meaningful. Is like
And the smallest people are tasked with fixing it. No one else can fix it.
That's just what makes it just so, yeah.
No one else can fix it. Every single person that's come into contact with the ring.
They're flawed, they're vulnerable, they'll use it for purposes that they shouldn't be using it for, and that will be the downfall. And so this is the only way that it can be done, that it has to be done. And it's just
what stroke of genius is that?
It's just such an epic fucking tale, right? Just David versus Goliath, good versus evil, all of it kind of thrown into a blender, and a good, and again in the best way possible, where it's just like you can't really top it in terms of just like epic storytelling. You really can't, and it may be a classic kind of story, but it's classic for a reason, and it's just this is like the perfect execution of it almost, and so.
For Return of the King, I would enjoy. I'm sure Anna knows a lot about Tolkien.
Well, definitely. I think that the intention is that she can certainly join us for that, so we can, bookend certainly her appearances and give us some insight into some Lord of the Ringsy stuff that you and I are not privy to, not being book readers and such.
I would enjoy to know how something like this was written, like the source material, because it really is, like you said. I mean, it really is epic storytelling. Well,
I mean, and it's epic storytelling, and you say it's classic and everything, but like at the time it was written, I'm not sure if that was it was probably groundbreaking, and now a lot of what we know as modern fantasy owes so much to Tolkien stuff. So it's
crazy. Anyways, Two Towers, man. Awesome movie.
Very good movie.
A lot of acrobatic shenanigans from elves. They're obviously like you obviously want elves on your side more so than I think any other species. Like they're immortal.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah.
You don't want to date their daughters if you're mortal because they obviously think less of you.
Yeah, the father's going to be very upset about that sort of thing. But I was going to say, I think something that we haven't really got into is it's an epic moment in Helm's Deep. Is the final epic moment in Helm's Deep is Gandalf's return, bringing the Rohirrim with him, which is big tide turning sort of thing. But I think that gets to the bigger point of Gandalf's back, and when this movie kicks off with the fucking dream sequence, which I don't think is quite a dream sequence. It's fucking, we get more of the Gandalf versus the Balrog, which is fucking cool. And then we do get the actual return of Gandalf the White, who is kind of noticeably different than Gandalf the Grey. Not as again, symptomatic of the sort of thing of this movie is like, you know what? You lose Gandalf in Fellowship, and it's obviously a huge fucking critical moment, and it's very sad.
Right.
You get Gandalf back, and it's like, oh, fuck yeah, Gandalf's back. But Gandalf's not Gandalf anymore, if that makes sense. He's a bit different. He's changed. He was a fun, pipe-smoking wizard in the first one, and now he's Gandalf the White. He's a bit more, I don't know, thoughtful and almost kind of colder and calculated than the Gandalf that we saw, originally, like a reborn sort of more clinical version of Gandalf. Still very much on the side, but kind of more calculating, and I don't know. It's one of those things. It's just like, all right, reviving characters, is that going to be problematic? Is that going to be like, oh great, yeah, all right, so no one dies in this universe, which obviously is not true, as we know. Boromir is super dead, although we do get him in flashbacks, which is appreciated. More Sean Bean's always good. But yeah, what do you think about Gandalf the White? I always thought it was cool, but I'm curious if you thought it was cool.
No, I
fucking horse Shadowfax.
Yes. I like Gandalf the Grey. Gandalf the Grey is just a kind-hearted.
He's just like the he just warms your heart. Gandalf the White is like he's probably who you need to win a fucking war.
His business.
Right, you know what I mean? But
well, he said that the White Wizard was the highest of the order. Right. Now, because if
he got a promotion,
I'm not the right person to talk about this shit. But if I'm not mistaken, I think that the Gandalf is a species of things, and a species. He is a different species. He's not a man, and he has been reborn as now the White Wizard or a White Wizard, and like they do their colors,
right.
The colors signify the pecking order, right?
Sure,
so,
yeah.
And now he is the same. He's of the same rank as Saruman.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, anyways, he's been changed. He's died and he's been reborn. I think is kind of the way that's supposed to be.
Right. Yeah.
And it's unfortunate that you can't be born with the same kind of sense of humor and lightheartedness, but perhaps it's because the stakes are higher and he's aware of more things, right? So, he has found his glorious purpose, or his, what do they call that? What do they say in Loki?
I think glorious purpose.
Yeah, his glorious purpose, So, he's to deliver Middle Earth. He's supposed to fix it. So, anyways, I think it's cool. I think it's awesome that he comes, he tells him on the third day, on the dawn of 9:00 in the morning, and whatever he says.
Look to the east.
Look to the east, and I will be there.
And lo and behold,
there he is.
There he is, blinding everyone in sight.
I thought it was kind of goofy that they ride their horse. They drive their horses. They ride their horses out of the keep, and they just fuck all those orcs up. Just ride your horses through orcs. That's the answer.
Yeah.
Because they were falling all over the place. But anyways, Gandalf in this movie is not as, he's different. He's a different character in this movie.
He's changed.
And he is, I don't know, he's just less of a, he's pivotal, but he's not, I don't know how to describe it. His sacrifice, it doesn't undo his sacrifice in the first movie.
It does, right, I agree. It doesn't feel cheap of just being just kidding, I'm actually alive. Because he really is, at the end of the day,
a different
character entirely. Yeah. No, I think that's a good way of looking at it, is it doesn't undo anything.
And in many ways, it might even
solidifies.
It might even elevate the
gone.
sacrifice, because he gave those things. He gave his self away. When he jumped off, or not jumped off. I guess he fucking fell. But you also get that the fucking battle sequence. He falls and grabs his sword and says, "All right, it's time to fuck you up, Balrog."
I'm gonna easy fucking slays a Balrog. That's some badass shit. It's fucking cool.
Yeah, that was crazy. I almost forgot about that.
Yeah, it's cool.
I guess if I'm getting pulled down here, I'm fine. You done fucked up. Anyways, you don't top Gandalf, dude. Gandalf is...
Yeah, he's pretty fucking... Well, what if I was a man named Faramir? Would you think that I could top Gandalf if I offered you cinnamon wheat ice cream?
That fucking guy.
I will say, I mentioned obviously Carl Urban being a little jarring from watching The Boys recently. I'm sure. I would have watched this movie last year, and I don't remember it being the case. Man, it's hard to take David Wenham seriously after watching Iron Fist. I think we've made it worse for ourselves because we've memed, for ourselves within this podcast, David Wenham's voice and the ice cream sequence of Iron Fist. But
it is the most ridiculous thing, though, right? Surely.
Yeah, but I like him. It's not anything against him. It's just hard to separate him from fucking Iron Fist. So anyway, I figured I'd mention that.
Frodo.
I have a couple. Frodo. It's just something about his voice.
Samwise. Hobbits, come. Would you like some cinnamon wheat ice cream?
This creature of yours, was he eating ice cream that is a different flavor than cinnamon wheat?
Perhaps he
so
too.
I must kill him like Kyle. Fucking beat him with my ice cream scoop. I don't know if that's actually how Kyle got killed in Iron Fist, but I'm just assuming that he got killed with the ice cream scoop because that's the way it should have happened.
Jesus Christ.
Man. What a great show Iron Fist was. For anyone lost and not understanding what's happening, it's just a really good show. You should definitely watch season 1 of, for sure. To get it, you just wouldn't get it unless you were there with us, So
the worst thing about that dude's character, I will say it. The worst thing about this dude's character is like he looks. It's like he understands that what he's doing is bad.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, but I got to be better. I got to at least live up to my brother's name,
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, I understand that you have this evil fucking ring that's corrupting everybody, but you know what? Let's take it to my city, Send it to the city.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, this is one of those things that just wait until you watch Return of the King. You get the sliver of Denethor here. Return of the King is when you get full-on Denethor, and man, it's just the most infuriating shit. Yeah, the end is satisfying, yes, for sure. But just watching it, moment to moment, it's just like, Jesus Christ, this guy, and he's eating his fucking tomatoes or whatever at some point. We'll talk about it.
I do remember that. Oh, it's funny. Shit. What was I going to say? Oh, some asshole. The asshole in that city, that ruined city. I can't remember the name of the city. I'm bad with names. Okay. But near the end of the movie, they go to that ruined city.
You're like, you're going to be fucking, you're going to lose your
You
shit.
know the laws of our city. You're going to be killed or you forfeit your life. It's like.
My life is forfeit.
Who the fuck are you, dude? Mind your own business,
Yeah, why don't you go fuck off?
I'm the son of the
Do your
steward.
own fucking thing.
Yeah, that fucking guy. What's that guy doing back there? Anyways.
Yeah, being a douche. Anyway, my last couple of thoughts. Howard Shore. We haven't praised him at all this episode, but it needs to be reiterated that his work on The Lord of the Rings in general is not just limited to the Fellowship of the Ring being excellent work. This one is obviously uses some of the same themes, but anything that's new in here is really, really cool. The strings for Rohan, really, really always stand out to me when they're played. Very, very memorable theme. What an incredible fucking score. I'm going to say it again for the next episode too, but holy fucking shit. Howard Shore. And we'll talk about his process too, or at least kind of how he put this all together and how he made it happen. We'll talk about that, and it just needs to be said. And my last thought is the new additions to the cast. We've talked about them obviously in the scheme of things of their role in the movie. But fuck, they all just fit right in. It's a really tough thing, I think, of just being like the Fellowship of the Ring is like, like everyone, like that first movie is so iconic. It's so classic. All these characters are classic. And like you spend most of this movie with Gollum, you spend most of this movie with all the new characters in Rohan, and they're all just like such seamless additions. And I think that is worth praising is just, Andy Serkis, fucking relishing this shit. Bernard Hill, Brad Dourif, who's Wormtongue, who's fucking iconic in his own, nasty sort of way. Miranda Otto and Carl Urban. I think props to them for just, slotting right in. And just feeling like part, we're branching out, we're building out this universe. We're exploring the world of men, seeing Rohan, who I mean, is not really, they're not a factor at all in Fellowship of the Ring at all. We get a lot of Gondor stuff, but we don't get Rohan. So, just want to, give the actors themselves a little bit of praise there. So, I think we've hit on everything I wanted to talk about for the Two Towers. But certainly I'll give you an opportunity if you have anything else you want to shout out.
No, I mean, I can't think of anything else. I mean, it's the continuation of the Fellowship for sure.
And you know what? It keeps the momentum, and I'm looking forward to the Return of the King. Is how it, the Fellowship of the Ring, and you talked about it. It can be viewed as a standalone experience. Like obviously, it's not the end of the story, but it's such a good movie in its own right that like you can just watch it and be happy. But I think continuing with the Two Towers doesn't feel like this is just getting worse and worse. And yes, I think that it is not as good of a film as Fellowship, and I think that I prefer Fellowship, independently as well. But the Two Towers is really good. Like, all of these movies are really good. Spoilers for Return of the King. Also a very good movie. Big surprise. They're consistently really, really good movies. And Two Towers just kind of keeps that momentum going. It makes you, there's enough in it that advances the story, keeps you kind of enthralled, engaged throughout, and then, hands it off. There's the looming threat of what's going on with Frodo and Sam as they take this pass, into Mordor, with Gollum. Gollum's setting them up for something. Helm's Deep, there's a relief there, but obviously that's not the end of the story. Like Isengard has been fucked up in a big bad way, but Mordor remains. Like the ultimate enemy still remains. Sauron is still very much there. The ring has not been destroyed. So, there's still lots of story to be told. And indeed, there's 4 hours worth of story to be told, as you'll find out, before long. So, but it's a good handoff. It really does, keep the torch, runs with the torch, Legolas, Gimli, Aragorn style, and hands it off. And I think a really effective fashion. So yeah. All right, that is really it for me. Should we wrap it up? Ready to call it a day? Call it a night? Call it an episode?
I think that's it. I don't think I have anything else.
All right. Well, I think that will do it then. Thank you all for listening. If you enjoyed what you heard, please spread the word. We are on Patreon at patreon.com/watchreviewrepeat. Yes, I know you heard this not too long ago, but I'm going to reiterate it for those still around. If you're listening to this on the regular feed, $2 a month will get you access to our next bonus episode on The Return of the King. I encourage you to do that. Odds are by the time this is on the regular feed, we will maybe have recorded that episode and have it up. I can't guarantee that, but it'll certainly be up shortly from this being up on the regular feed if it hasn't already been recorded. So really, if you want to hear our thoughts on The Return of the King, finish up the Lord of the Rings trilogy coverage that we're working on, that we're doing, you got to be one of the first, patreon.com. That's the way to do it. So we encourage it. We're not going to force it on you, but we encourage it. Our website's watchreviewrepeat.com. You can get links to all of our socials there. We are on Twitter at WRRpod if you want to follow us. We are on Facebook at facebook.com/watchreviewrepeat if you want to like our page. And we're on Instagram at watchreviewrepeat. We try to obviously post when new shit's going up, when new Patreon episodes are up and stuff like that on those. So just keep an eye out for that and follow us there if you want to, be kept updated on the latest of what's going on. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, you can send those our way to watchreviewrepeat@gmail.com. And in fact, I might say if you've got something to say, you can send it our way. So whatever, Lord of the Rings, beyond. We're in Thanksgiving season now, but we're also almost in Christmas season, sort of. Whatever you got, we'll talk about it. Whether it's on this and whether it's Lord of the Rings related, we'll do it on a bonus episode. If it's not, then we'll probably do it on a regular episode. And we've certainly got some stuff in the pipeline on that front too. So certainly encourage you guys to get in touch with us. Our intro and outro checks, Mechanolith by Kevin MacLeod and Incompetech.com, licensed under the Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0 license. And I guess it kind of goes without saying, but our next bonus episode, we'll say, obviously, the regular episodes is kind of separate from this. We're talking about the Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King. We got to finish the Lord of the Rings trilogy. So look forward to that. I am looking forward to watching it.
Very much. I haven't seen it in a long time.
I got to carve some time out, it might be a weekend project, but you and I will be reassembling to talk about it quite soon. So, Andrew, why don't you take us out?
Take care now. Bye-bye then.
Laters on the Menjay.